With electrical services from Economy Electric Heating and Cooling, you can radiate the perfect amount of light and energy into your home. From rewiring and code upgrades to ceiling fans, lighting, security, and more, Economy Electric Heating and Cooling's trained electricians will make sure you can enjoy your home on full power all the time. For a free estimate on electrical work, call Economy Electric Heating and Cooling at 219-923-4441, and you can visit them on the web at 4ajobdoneright.com. That's the number 4ajobdoneright.com.
Earn how you learn from the best hands in the business. The Bricklayers Allied Craftworkers for Indiana, Kentucky Apprenticeship. That's right, this is a paid apprenticeship.
I'm getting an education while learning a trade and getting paid for it.
The thing that surprised me the most about this apprenticeship program is the respect I have received after the proper time and training.
Classes start soon, so apply now. There are training centers throughout Indiana and Kentucky. We are the Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers for Indiana, Kentucky Apprenticeship. The best hands in the business.
For over 100 years, Burns Funeral Home and Crematory has been assisting families in their time of need. Serving Northwest Indiana, the staff at Burns Funeral Home will help guide your family in creating a meaningful ceremony. From a simple to elaborate to traditional or unique, the caring family at Burns Funeral Home will tailor a ceremony to fit your needs. And for your other loved ones, Burns Funeral now has a pet cemetery and crematory. Visit burnsfuneral.com or give them a call at 219-942-1117.
Blythe's Team Sports in Valparaiso is a leader in athletics apparel and equipment sales. With in-house production including screen printing, trophies, embroidery, and more, Blythe's can help you to create the perfect look. For more information, visit them online at teamblythes.com. Blythe's Team Sports in Valparaiso, where the athletes shop.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the RSN All Area Football Show. If you're just joining us, we went over our honorable mentions. Now we're getting into some of the fun. We got some second team mentions. We'll do the first teams later in the show. But now we're getting even more into our list. Do you remember how many people we had on the honorable mention list by any chance?
Ooh, I don't want to count them out right now, but it's a pretty
About
penny.
50, would you say, or more?
On the honorable mention,
Yeah.
I'd say it's definitely pushing about 30.
Okay.
I'd say kids. So again, shout out to all of them. But this is kind of the nitty gritty.
Yeah,
this is the best in the area.
This is where Mike DeWan was watching film at 3 a.m. at his house.
Oh, might have been 5. No,
he was acting like he was a D1 scout.
A little bit. No, it was all a team effort, man. You already know it was a team effort.
But
I had to do some research, man. These guys are fun to watch, and again, it was fun film to watch. It was a way to put it.
So let's start off the quarterback. It's going to be Mark Rowland out of the Boone Girl Wolves. Congratulations, Mark. An incredible year for the young man. Over 3,000 total yards, a 65% of completions, 42 total touchdowns. He led the area in passing yards and total touchdowns. He broke 2 of his own school records for passing yards and passing touchdowns in a single season. He's only a junior. Boone Grove, he's back next year. You guys got yourself a great quarterback. And he's a 3A junior all-state selection. And Mark Rowland, we talked about it all year long. He was rolling with the Boone Grove Wolves, and he is definitely worthy of making this list.
Yeah, it was super fun to keep up with these guys. Again, we see a lot of his receivers on this list a little bit. I mean, he didn't just target one guy. It was all just spreading it around the field. Again, find somebody to make a play, and they'll make it for him, and he'll put it on the money. Again, watching his film, it was fun to see kind of that offense work because we unfortunately didn't really get a chance to get out there and catch them again. Hopefully we change that next year. But yeah, this dude's a baller. And, again, I'm kind of interested to see what college coaches are thinking of him. I was kind of, again, doing a little bit of research. Recruiting hasn't picked up quite yet, I believe, for Rowland, but I believe, again, the way after this season, I think coaches should take a look at this guy. And, again, their offense is kind of set up for the college level. Again, it's spread offense, it's quick, it's fast-paced. They kind of get things moving, and it's kind of what I bet college coaches are looking for their future quarterback. So, again, shout out to Rowland and just that whole Boone Grove team for a fantastic season. Yeah, absolutely. A running back, it's going to be Crown Point's own Larry Ellison. His first year as a running back, he had over 300 carries, over 1,800 rushing yards, and 29 total touchdowns. He had the school record in carries and rushing yards. He actually ended up leading the area in rushing yards as well. He was a 6A junior all-state selection. A huge, and I mean huge part
for the Crown Point Bulldog run to the state championship in the Class 6A. And if you go back to those games, especially against Westfield and Penn, he was more pivotal than anything, playing, as the quarterback in a way, while the Wildcat formation allowed direct snaps right to him. And, look, he wasn't rushing 40, 50 yards per carry, but, he was getting those huge first downs when needed. He was stretching out the clock. And Larry Ellison was just a huge part to this Crown Point team, and I know the Bulldogs are going to be excited to have him back on the team next year. Him and Noah Ehrlich, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Spoiler, nevertheless, Ellison. Those two guys are going to be a huge dynamic duo next year. But Larry Ellison, one of the best years you could ask for as a running back.
Yeah, he impressed us a lot. Again, we find ourselves at a lot of Crown Point games this year, and I was at that Penn game specifically. Again, when the offense wasn't really clicking, maybe at the arms or legs of Noah Ehrlich, they put Ellison in the backfield and they let defenses know, hey, he's getting the ball, come and stop me, and he's the guy. Again, you cannot take down on the first tackle. You can't arm tackle him. You have to gang wrap him up because he's fantastic at breaking tackles just as much as the next guy. And again, this is for his first season at the running back position. This was, you can't get much better than this, setting a school record in multiple categories. And like you said, Crown Point, they're really looking forward to maybe even a step up next year for this kid. They're going to be threatening next year, and I think it starts with Larry Ellison.
Yeah, absolutely. Another Bulldog, as we'll move to the receivers, is Landon Delich, the 6'4" senior, had over 40 catches on the year, over 670 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, and he also had 26 total tackles as he was a DB, here and there. And he easily was the number one target for Ehrlich. I remember calling the LaPorte game with Jay Simmons, and it was about first down. Ehrlich was a play-action pass, and he had Delich wide open. Now, Delich dropped the pass. I'm not trying to call him out, but the next 6 plays were passes to Landon Delich. He caught them all and eventually scored for a touchdown, and that tells you the type of receiver he is. He's a matchup nightmare with his height, and he's got a speed of 4.56. That's pretty deadly, and when you got a guy that tall and that fast, a lot of one-on-one opportunities for him. He is a Toledo commit, but like we mentioned, he was another big part in Noah Ehrlich's success this year. Like, you have a guy that size, that speed, and we called we didn't call it, but we were there, the Lake Central game. It was a number one target at that game as well. And you could tell the way he threw to him, he trusted Delich to make whatever adjustments he needed to get in position to catch the football, whether that was getting his feet set near the sideline, whether that was getting his hands somewhere where only he could catch it and not picked off by a DB. And I really saw a lot of great tools, and I know that Landon Delich has the tangibles to play at the next level.
Yeah, he's, again, the matchup nightmares. I want to thank him personally. I was on his Twitter account. He provided us that 40-yard dash time, 4.56. I love him shouting that out, but again, it shows the type of player he is. He could beat you with just about any route. Again, you could throw him a jump ball with the 6'3" frame, but he could also kind of beat you with the speed on a dig route. He's tough, man. Again, believe it or not, on 24/7 Sports, he's actually rated as a safety recruit in the 2-star. So it's interesting. I'm kind of interested to see where he plays at the next level. Again, he obviously logged some snaps this year at the DB position, and with that speed, he kind of has that DB speed at that imposing 6'3" frame. So I'm interested to see what he does at the next level. But again, I want to congratulate him for a fantastic season. Again, a lot of Crown Point Bulldogs on this list, and again, they all deserve their flowers, and that's why we're here today. So. Yeah, it's again. I'm interested. Again, it's going to be, I think, a bright future for this kid at Toledo.
Our next receiver will be LeBron Hill from the Morton Governors. 34 receptions on the year, 564 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. Another guy, another matchup nightmare. He's 6'5", but he's got the speed to return kicks, which he did actually this year. He is a guy who is just blazes right out of that kickoff return, or like we mentioned about Landon Delich. If you have him one-on-one, probably going to throw it to him just because of how tall he is and how fast he is. He has a 5A junior all-state selection, 3-star recruit, currently with offers from Ball State, Central Michigan, and Toledo. But LeBron Hill, he's a guy you kind of brought me onto him. I wasn't really – I didn't have much knowledge about him going into this year, but you were kind of all about him from the get-go, and you're absolutely right. The way he played, the way he sized up, and he's only a junior, so he's got another year as well. But LeBron Hill was impressive for those Governors.
That's going to be a fun Morton team next year. Again, LeBron Hill, definitely big jump this season. I think he was first at Hammer Central, transferred over to Morton, and yeah, coaches are kind of taking notice again. He's getting offers from some MAC schools, and I think it's going to only go up from here. You see a 6'5" guy with a kick return speed that's very imposing, and I think he's just going to even skyrocket more next year with the play of Holland Harris and just that whole Governors team with who they're bringing back next year. I'm excited for LeBron.
Our next and final receiver on the second team is Josh Oglesby. 42 receptions, 528 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. He also had 13 punts, where he totaled 447 punting yards. He's a 3-year starter, but this was really the first time he stepped up in that huge role in that position. And he had 122 or 127 receiving yards in only his freshman and sophomore season. So, I mean, you kind of talk about that. Go from that to 528 in 1 year. He was second on his team in receiving yards, but he was first in touchdowns. He was honorable mention all conference. Another guy who, we're kind of seeing step up in a way. A lot of these guys we've seen in the region especially is when they're called upon, they step up, and Josh Oglesby in the offense you need him to step up, and that's what he did, and it was very impressive to watch.
And he's only a junior now. He's kind of going to be that kind of that number one next year. We know Roland's coming back, and they got a couple other pieces on that Boone Grove team, but Oglesby, again, they lose a bit of talent at the receiver position, so I think Oglesby, again, is in line for maybe another step up year next, but this is a tall receiver group. Doing my research, I think Oglesby is also over 6'2". So these guys are all, again, combination of size and speed that there's a reason they're on this list. So
yeah, now let's move to the old lineman. First off, Jackson Collard, 5A junior all-state selection, and he anchored a program best rushing attack this year in the old lineman. It's like you said, there's not much stats on them. How do you really judge? And the one, I kind of said it sarcastically, just look at the teams who had the best rushing numbers this year, and that's what Jackson Collard was a part of.
Yeah, again, a lot of coaches, a lot of NCC coaches, they had a lot of praise for Jackson. I had actually the privilege of coaching this kid. When he was in 7th grade, I was going into my senior year. I know, he's a good dude, man.
So he's a Mike DeWan product.
Yeah, that's probably not the best thing to put besides your name, but he's a good dude. Yeah, I can't say I was the best coach, but I'm no O-line coach, but whoever was the coach that year did him well. And, again, it's what they did this year is fantastic for the Stings. And, of course, Ascadon, we talked about him earlier. But, yeah, shout out to Jackson. Again, a lot of these big boys up front, we got to give them the flowers they deserve.
Next is Luke Juris, first team all-conference. Really was a nasty guard, and they offered a mean 1-2 punch on the interior with Olagu. And Luke Juris, he's another guy that you really liked, you were talking to me about, and you're the one that always gives me the O-line info. I feel like if anybody truly loves and appreciates the position, it's you, and you will appreciate the way Luke Juris played this year.
Yeah, again, Hobart, a lot of these NCC coaches, again, we talked about the run dominant of NCC, so a lot of these NCC coaches got back to us, thankfully, and they let us know about those guys up front and watched a little bit of film and on Luke Juris and his teammate we're going to mention that's on the first team on the O-line. They're a tough bunch, and again, Willie Shear, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, had a fantastic year at the running back position, and Johnny Sorensen as well did some things with his legs. But yeah, watching this guy, he's nasty. He's a nasty guard. They were running behind him a lot. He had a fantastic season for sure.
Yeah, now we have Damian Herrera out of Morton. He was really the guy that really helped establish that Morton running game, and that's the guy you need when you have a running back like Dontrell Harris in the backfield, and he was really the leader of that group that led to high rushing numbers from the Morton Governors.
Ran behind him a lot. Again, watching his film, he finishes his blocks. He's a nasty dude. He's a guy that wants to get under your skin and make you know that about his presence. And again, Morton, I think Herrera's coming back next year as well. I believe he's only a junior, and again, I'm expecting big things from this kid come 2024.
Yep. Next is Caleb Sharp out of Valpo. He was opposite tackle to Matt Hoffer, and look, Matt Hoffer is a really good O-lineman as well. So when you're playing opposite of a D1 commit, and you got to find a way to step up, and that's what Caleb Sharp did. You look at Valpo, another team that was able to pound the rock, another team who had a lot of rushing success, even when their starting running back was out for the majority of the season.
Correct.
It tells you how good that O-lineman was. He was an all-conference selection. He's a 2-year starter. Yeah, Caleb Sharp, obviously Matt Hoffer is going to be the guy that people talk about when you talk about the O-line of Valpo, but don't sleep on Caleb Sharp as well.
I think he's next in line. Again, he's anchoring that other tackle position on the opposite side of Hoffer, and again, he's a fantastic piece. And he's a guy to look out for next year. Again, it seems like Valpo just pumps out these O linemen left and right, similar to how Maryville pumps out D linemen. It's Sharp's next in line again. He impressed me a lot this year.
Yeah. Final one is going to be Jonathan Ross out of Lake Central. Another guy who really helped, a great running back. He helped Xavier Williams. Really a great season, although he didn't play 100% of that season. And also Marianne Brooks, the backup running back who started a lot of games. He helped him as well. He's a guy who's an all-conference selection, another 2-year starter. When we were doing training with the tribe, I should say, he was somebody who was always being physical in practice, and somebody Coach Rick Good really loved coaching, and he was the leader of that group. So, I was able to get that main, exposure of Jonathan Ross for covering Lake Central of what we did for them. But, he was a beast at the O-line, and I know Chase Kwiatkowski had a couple of holes in that RPO game because of Ross.
Yeah, he's a dude you want to have on your offensive line. He's an imposer. Again, he's going to finish blocks. He's, again, I don't want to say he was kind of the top dog on that O-line that kind of helped Xavier get where he is today, but that's a dude you want on your side. And, again, he had another fantastic season. I'm excited to see where he goes from here.
Yeah, now we have kind of this is like the utility player, a guy who can do it all on the field. It's Willie Shear out of Hobart. And the reason why is because he was a running back. He even returned a little bit, and he played defense when they needed to. On the year, he had 165 carries, over 1,200 total yards, 34 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and 17 touchdowns. And this is his first true season as a running back, replacing the great Trey Gibson. He was a first-team all-conference, and Willis Shear was a guy that we talked about a plethora of times during our Region Football Weekly shows. And I feel like maybe he got annoyed the way how much we talked about him. But, no, he's one of those guys where he can do everything. You need him to be running back, he's there. You need him to be even a receiver, he's there. You need to play DB, he's there. Linebacker, he's there. Kickoff, punt returner, he's there. And that's kind of why we gave this, position of, that utility guy, that athletic player, because that is a position, it's not a position, but it's still an opportunity to give somebody recognition who's doing not just one side of football, not just two, but three things on the football field.
Yeah, again, going into his first year, really making a big impact. Only a junior, so we're expecting a lot from him next year for the Brickies. But, yeah, it's tough to fill the shoes to Trey Gibson, and I think he did that pretty well. Maybe not to the level of Trey Gibson, but that's a lot to ask. But, hey, we still got another year of Shearer, and, again, he's kind of going to be that guy next year. Hobart's losing a bit of talent. Of course, they're going through a little bit of coaching carousel as well over there. We don't have to get into that, but it's again, I'm excited looking to see what this guy can do next year.
Yeah, let's move to the defense now. We'll go to the line. There's 4 guys. We'll start with Eli Deerdorf. 71 total tackles on the year, 17 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, including an interception. He was first team all-conference.
Yeah, he's tough for Kankakee Valley. Again, it's a lot of praise from his own head coach. He got back to us with a couple of his players, and it's he had a fantastic season. From what I saw, I believe he just really – going into this year, he didn't have the stats really that emulated this at all. He really jumped out, and he kind of has that next level frame at the D-line position. He's kind of 6'4", kind of little. I want to say 215. I think I remember on his Max Preps page. He's a big he's a kind of a matchup nightmare for opposing tackles, but he also made his presence known on the offensive end. So yeah, shout out to him again. It was a fantastic season for those Cougars.
We'll move over to James Veal now. 50 total tackles, 15 of those for loss, 5.5 sacks. He in fact was voted the MVP defensive lineman by his team. So not only is a second team mentioned, but he has the respect of his teammates, which you love to see.
And that's a fantastic honor from the Maryville Pirates.
Absolutely.
There is we're going to mention 2 more Maryville D linemen on this list on eventually our first team. Spoiler alert, but that's high praise from your teammates, especially with how packed this D lineman room is.
Next, Mark Ganales. He has 75 total tackles on the year, 3 for loss and a sack. Another all-conference selection on that line.
Another CP dog. Yeah, sorry about the typo there. It's Gonzalez on that one. I know. These notes. Sorry, man.
Setting me up to
I
fail.
had to watch film, and I had to do.
Mark Gonzalez
there it is.
out of the Crown Point.
Yeah, only sophomore, man. He actually, I believe, he was either second or third on the Crown Point team at the D lineman position behind the great Will Clark, who we'll talk about later. But that is a very, very impressive number to be, again, the best defense in the area and near the top of your team's leaderboard at the nose guard position. Again, he's not your typical nose guard. He's got some decent height, but he's not really a lane clogger. He can move around pretty quickly, and watching his film, the dog's got a good one for the next 2 years.
Is the next name typed incorrectly.
We're good.
All right, Adrian Holly out of Michigan City.
I'll let you know.
41 total tackles, 15 and a half for a loss, 7 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, a DAC all-conference selection. He's a guy I was impressed with. You know, when we were doing our notes for the Lake Central Michigan City game that we broadcasted, he was a guy who popped out for me. You know, the stats for the whole year, and he was a big part in that defense. And you had Deion Smith. Sometimes there he didn't play defense all the time, but when you did have a Deion Smith and an Adrian Holly on that line, man, there was some destruction going on.
Yeah, he's a dog, and I believe he was an all-state selection too. I forgot to list that in, but he's offers that next level size. I think college coaches are starting to see that. I'm excited to see what this kid can bring next year for that pretty solid Michigan City team. Again, when we were talking to coaches, Coach French actually got back to us as well, and he offered some high praise for Adrian Holly. So it should be, again, I'm interested to see kind of if City could take even another further step. We saw what they did this year, but we'll see what they can do next year as well.
Let's move over to the linebackers now. It's going to be Gio Bailey Hanna, and 68 total tackles on the year, 16 sacks, 3 fumble recoveries, including 3 forced fumbles. He was second in the state in sacks as a linebacker, a 5A junior all-state selection.
Yeah, he's quick, man. I was watching a little bit of his film again. Hammond Central. They had a solid year, maybe not of years past, but they're of course you got to venture out and play some tough teams. But they walk him up a lot. Again, 16 sacks as a linebacker is a crazy number. And what they kind of do, again, they send the house, and he's kind of their speed rusher. They bring him up to the line, and they just tell him, go get the quarterback, and he did that 16 separate times. If he's not doing that, he's forcing pressure. And, again, I bet he's probably shooting for that number next year. That's a tall number to ask, but, I expect plenty more where this is coming from Gio Bailey Hanner.
Bradley Gibson is your next linebacker on our second team, 112 total tackles, ton of those for loss, 4 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. And he as well was a first-team all-conference. We've talked about him a couple of times as well on Region Football Weekly when we did some of our game previews. He was a guy that always stood out in the stat sheet.
Yeah, we did plenty of Hobart games this year. Again, this was a fun guy to watch. He didn't really have maybe the tackle mark he probably wanted in comparison to last season, but nonetheless, this dude he's tough, and he's starting to go on a little bit of visits I see here and there. He's going to probably play at the next level somewhere, I hope at least. Again, he's a very talented dude for that Hobart Bricky defense that – again, he was the guy that they needed to turn to if they didn't want to, when times are tough, he was kind of the guy to go out there and make a play.
Yeah, absolutely. Xavier Harlovich now. I had the pleasure of watching him out of Wheeler. Man, that kid can fly on the football field. 114 total tackles. I believe that's one of the best in the state, not just in the region. He was up there for total tackle numbers. 5 interceptions. He also had 5 touchdowns. Another guy who played both sides of the field. He was a guy who kind of played that fullback tight end role. First team all-conference selection, but you and I both really liked what we saw from Harlovich throughout the year.
Yeah, Wheeler in general, I kind of talked about how those linebackers, there's a lot of tandems in the area, and Jackson Smith, another guy from Wheeler who was on our honorable mention list. It was tough picking between the two. I don't know if I wanted to pick both, but Harlovich, again, 5 interceptions at the linebacker position is fantastic, as well as what he did on the offensive side. It's again, credit to Wheeler. Again, I think it starts. We look at the offensive numbers. Of course, it's the sexy stat to kind of look out for, and the defense and O-linemen, of course, as well, also often get overlooked. And again, the play of Harlovich and Jackson Smith really kept things level for the Wheeler Bearcats. And again, got to give them both a shout out.
Ty Bean is your final linebacker. 86 total tackles, 9.5 for loss, 2 blocked field goals as well. Another all-conference selection, and another time that we've had a chance to watch these guys. Yeah, we've had the opportunity and the pleasure to watch a lot of these guys play on this list, and it makes it easy a little bit making it just because we see how they play, we know how good they are,
right.
But it makes it so hard because of how talented all these players and athletes are. Ty Bean was a one that a lot of us at RSN liked. He had a couple of games that really kind of stuck out to us. I know the LaPorte and Valpo game we did, he was really huge and kind of holding them to scoreless. And that was a defense who was very stifling. Of
course. I believe he was voted team MVP at his banquet, which again, that's speaking a lot of volume as being with the Valparaiso Vikings.
Yeah.
Again, of course, they had probably state aspirations. Nonetheless, we don't have to get into that, but that's a very talented team from top to bottom, and that shows again how much his teammates respect him and the impact he had on the Valparaiso Vikings. Again, we mentioned kind of the tandems. Again, Sammy Ampiliotis, another fantastic piece. That again, both these guys are fantastic for the Vikings at the linebacker position. But Veen, again, he flies all over the play, and all over the field, and he's again going to probably make some noise at the next level if he chooses to go that route.
Let's move to the DBs now. You got Jalen Holmes, 85 total tackles, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery. He actually led his team in tackles. First team all-conference, a good season for Jaden Holmes.
Yeah, for sure. It's again, he didn't do too much leading up to this year. Again, we talked about how fantastic that Andrean team was a year ago. Of course, the play of Drake Bowen and some other pieces that they had. But Holmes, again, he kind of stepped up and really filled that DB role. Again, he's only a junior. Andrean, they're going to have a scary secondary next year. We're going to talk about his running mate in the backfield on the first team, but it's they're solid. They're going to be solid next year. It was a tough year for Andrean, probably not to their typical standards, but I think next year they turned it around, and Jaden Holmes is going to be a name to look out for next year.
Next is Maryville Pirates' own John Peters. He played both sides of the football. He was a DB and a receiver, but 31 total tackles, interception as well. About 400 receiving yards and 2 tackles for loss. He was an all-conference selection in that DAC. But John Peters, he was a guy who played a huge role for the Maryville Pirates on that late run they went to the end of the year in that playoff run where they beat Valpo. And even in that Fort Wayne Snyder game that they lost, he was still a huge part on that team. And he played both sides of the ball pretty well. He could have been receiver or DB.
Yeah, he had a fantastic sophomore year at receiver. Numbers were a little bit down this year at the receiver position, but I think, again, they had a new quarterback getting used to kind of Dante Pope, getting on that same kind of telepathy. But, again, he'll be back next year, John Peters. And, again, a lot of Pirates coming back. Of course, they lose a couple, but they're going to be a tough team next year. And John Peters, again, a name to look out for those Purple Pirates. So
Tyler Verschure now, 25 total tackles, 5 interceptions, and 3 pass breakups. But career-wise, he has 17 interceptions. He's a 5A senior all-state selection. In fact, he's a 2-time all-state team member. We keep talking about that Viking defense, and Verschure was another guy who we were very sure about in putting on this list. We talk about Ampliotis, we talk about Veen. This was a defense that was as loaded as it gets, and really no region team had success against them in terms of offense. Crown Point won that game, but they only scored 19 points. I believe the most points a region team scored against Valpo was Maryville in the playoffs. That might have been the most points anyone has scored against their defense from Northwest Indiana, and Verschure was a big part.
Yeah, again, 2-time All-State team member. That speaks a lot of volumes, but if you want a definition of ball hawk in the area, I think it's Tyler Verschure.
Yeah.
He had 5 interceptions this year, and that's actually a down year. I think he had 7 last year, so it's... Yeah, this dude is something else. He also offers kind of track speed. I think he runs on the track team. He's quick. Again, he can make plays all over the field, and you do not want to test him in coverage. I'm excited to see where he goes from here.
I find it interesting because you mentioned it. He kind of had a down year in terms of interceptions, but it's almost like a sign of respect.
You don't want to throw to him.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe in the early going, you don't know about the kid. How is he in pressure, or how is he when the ball's thrown at him? And you find out, he picks you off 7 times.
He'll make you pay. He'll also make you pay in the return game, too. I want to say he returned, kind of offered as again, track speed, man. He's quick. He offers that speed at the DB position, and that's why he's on this list once again.
Yeah, so. Coming into this year, obviously, you think of them, you're like, yeah, we're not throwing the ball over there.
No, why would you?
Interceptions, I think it's just an interesting number. I always, obviously we don't have these inside stats. The NFL would. But how many times, a ball is thrown at a secondary or a DB, how many times it's targeted, caught, receiving yards, all that. They have the stats for that. But if we did, I feel like Tyler Verschure would have very few opportunities just because of how good he is.
Right.
So next is Marcel Dixon, 68 total tackles, 6 for loss, 4 interceptions, and 8 pass breakups. He was a first-team all-conference selection as well.
Yeah, sophomore too, man. He offers a lot for Westside. It's a bright piece of a solid Westside team that had a solid year. Again, he's a sure tackler. Obviously, getting 68 total tackles at the DB position is not easy. Again, it's GSSC. A lot of teams, I'd say, predominantly more running the ball, kind of smash mouth, and he's not afraid to go into the box and make a play. But again, 4 interceptions, also 8 pass breakups is a big number that sticks out to me. Again, he's kind of etching himself out. Again, 2 more years again with Westside. He's etching his name out as someone you do not want to throw to.
Yeah. Next is another guy who played both positions very well. It's kind of that spot we gave Willie Shear, but it's going to be Corey Noonan out of Boone Grove, and just because he played both sides of the football very well. 48 receptions, 518 receiving yards, 10 total touchdowns, but on defense he had 37 tackles and 7 interceptions. He was a first-team all-conference selection, as well as he led the area and interceptions. So not only one of the top targets for Mark Rowland, one of the best DBs there in the area.
Yeah, he's got some decent ball skills. It looks like he's got a nose for the ball, whether that's he's trying to score or score the other way on defense. Again, this Boone Grove team, so many playmakers, and it's tough. Again, the Noonan twins, they're both seniors, so it's kind of a package deal that it's going to be tough to replace for the Wolves next year. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Again, shout out to Corey, and it's. Again, that's a tough season to replicate for anybody. 7 picks along with 10 total touchdowns. That's a nice little campaign for the boy. So shout out to him.
Now let's move to special teams. Oliver Brewer, the kicker, Crown Point Bulldogs.
Freshie.
Really good year for him. 44 out of 46 on PATs, only 2 for 2 on field goals. He also had 6 punts for 234 yards. He had a big field goal actually in that Westfield game. It was the second field goal only made of the year. They don't, obviously Crown Point, they need to kick many field goals because they scored a bunch of times, but for a freshman kicker to step into that spot in the playoffs and make a field goal, that's pretty impressive. And then you have for the punter, Xander Langford, 41 of 49 on PATs, 4 of 5 on field goals, but overall he was a beast punting. Pat McAfee would be proud of him. Over 1,200 punting yards, and he averaged 30.5 yards per punt.
Yeah, Hobart's got a decent little special teams unit. We're going to talk about their long snapper a little bit later, but Oliver Brewer as well. Freshman on this list. Again, an offense as busy as Crown Point. They're usually partying in the end zone. Again, he's got a lot of PATs to make those points you can't really leave off the board, and he was effective as can be. And then, imagine having your second field goal kick of your career in the semi-state game. That takes a lot of poise. And again, Crown Point's got a good one for the next 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a break here on the RSN All Area Football Show, and when we come back, we'll do our first team selections. But you're watching this on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.